Guys, can you chat a little bit so we can hear you in the room?
Hello.
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 Hey, everyone.
Testing.
Okay, we hear you.
Still do have some feedback now, some echo.
Same here. Oh, now it's a little better.
Yeah, I have to mute here, or you guys will hear yourselves through an echo.
So we'll look for you to push mic on, mic off, looks like, and then it'll be less echoey, right?
Actually, unfortunately, no. My mic on my avatar will never turn off from this point forward, because that's the same screen that we're looking at you guys on right now. So I have a little controller up here that I can mute you guys.
Okay.
We'll make it work. And I think just the fact that we're pushing this technology to the edge is also part of the journey, right? It's what we do every day. I bet Heather knows this. I bet everybody in this room knows all about how whenever you're working in the space in XR, it's always a matter of working within the confines of making things work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so at this point, I'll say hi to everybody in the room here. Tom, do you want to switch the camera in Virbela so they can see the audience here real fast? The Mac in front of you, just hit transition. Okay, so as you guys can tell, we're doing a little bit of a co-streaming, I guess, hybrid event. Basically, this is a hybrid event. This is one of the things that VRAR Chicago does is we help to produce this type of technology. And so what we're doing, ooh, that was really loud spike there. We have an audience and we have presenters who are in a virtual space. They can see us. We can sort of see them. We can't see their audience as well as they can see you guys right now. You can switch it back to stage if you want, Tom, so everyone in the audience isn't too concerned. But they can see you. They can see us. We can see them. They're going to be presenting. We're going to be presenting. The whole thing, both virtual and live, is actually being streamed also to awe.live. I just wanted to give you all the heads up on that. We officially will get started in about 2 minutes, but I figured I'd give you all a little preset to what's happening since their audio is currently live into this room. We are currently live into that room, and we're also all streaming to awe.live at this point. With that, I will be quiet for another 2 minutes, and then we'll get started. But feel free to say hello, Caroline.
Hello, everybody. We're excited to be in both places at the same time and be streaming in so many different ways. So this is super exciting. Happy to be here.
Okay, so we'll officially get started at this point. Yay, 6:15. So as Tom just said, there's probably about 15 people watching live right now on awe.live. That number will go up and down as the event goes. We've got 15 to 20 in the room at the moment, about 10 in Virbela. That number will also fluctuate up and down. Anyway, hello, welcome. This is VR Chicago's The Next Evolution Meetup. I'm going to actually switch to slides really quickly, so you guys won't see the Virbela people anymore for a few more moments, but they're still there, trust me. And they can see us, which makes this fun. So, show of hands, who has never been to this event before? Most of you. That's new. That's been a while for that. I'll normally say show of hands how many of you have been here before, but process of elimination. So the topic for today, industry topic. So a little bit about the event, the history of the event. We've been doing this event now for over 5 years. It's been monthly for 5 years. The whole purpose of this event, frankly, is you, our audience. We want to help you take your next step forward with using this technology, working with this technology, whatever that step might be. If you are looking to connect with somebody in the industry, with a customer, if you're in the industry, VR AR industry, you're trying to connect with a customer, trying to find someone in venture capital, trying to just find a partner. If you're somebody in industry, healthcare industry, or any other industry at this point, trying to just find people who do VR and AR technology, the whole point of this event, we have networking, we have live demonstrations of the technology, we're meeting with people, we're streaming. The whole point here is for you guys to take your next step forward, whatever that step may be. We do have a great panel, both here live and virtually. They'll be presenting actually a very short presentation just on who they are, what their area of expertise is. The main purpose for that is because the main focus of the event is going to be question and answer. So prepare your questions because you're going to have a microphone to be able to actually ask them live questions so that you can get anything you want answered. That's why we bring in a bunch of experts. It's really not for them to like pitch their products or sell what they do. It's for them to be able to answer your questions. With that though, I do have to say that we would not be able to do this. These are our presenters for the day. There's a lot of them. I'll hold that up there for a few seconds. And then I'll move on because they're all going to be up here one by one. We do have to thank our sponsors. And I do believe, normally I go, well, actually, I will go to Bundle AR first. Who's talking this time? Is it Aaron or is it Anthony? All right, Anthony's coming up, and I do have the video this time. So we would not be able to do this event if it was not for sponsors. So we have to thank our sponsors and let them speak a little bit, grab a microphone, turn it on. And up first is Bundle AR.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Anthony Colon, and I am the marketing coordinator at Bundle AR. I just want to take a couple of minutes to kind of explain who we are and what we do. Bundle AR is an augmented reality company based out of Chicago. We're literally just 2 blocks away over on Hubbard Street. And what we've done is we've created a augmented reality content management system that's web-based that allows our users to create, edit, and access augmented reality without writing a single line of code. So we've been really, really hard at work trying to optimize our platform and make sure that people who have no coding experience whatsoever, like me, can now create augmented reality. So we do have a short video really quick to show off our technology a little more, if you'd like to play that, Matt.
And I will say this is an experiment. We'll see if this works. We're going to try and play the video here and share into Virbela at the same time. And of course, it's not playing. Well, it's playing, but the audio isn't. Could I have you talk over it?
Well, I'll do my best here, everyone. But the whole purpose of our platform is to be able to literally upload your content, drag and drop it into our CMS, our interface, be able to edit it as you feel necessary, all with just being able to use your mouse to click around, and then give it a unique bundle code and then publish it to our free app. So you can literally build augmented reality within a matter of minutes and send it out to whoever you deem your audience to be. And they can literally have your content within a matter of minutes. So it's really, really interesting. But with that being said, as you guys can see, the use cases and potential for AR are basically only limited by your imagination. And if you guys have any questions about our technology or our company whatsoever, we'll be sticking around to the end of the event. If you have any questions for me, Matt, or Aaron in the audience, we'll be around. So thank you so much, guys.
All right, sorry about that. I knew we were gonna get a glitch on the video. It was worth a try. I'll have it fixed for next time. I think I know what to do. And I'll try to get it fixed for your video because I know you have video with audio, I believe, right? Is it you who has video with audio or is it the virtual presenter who has video with audio? Okay, so I'll try and get the video fixed for that. I think I know what to do. But with that, our other sponsor that we're gonna point out very quickly because they didn't, frankly, they're very busy and they didn't have anybody that could be up here to speak today is 1871. We're all sitting or standing in it right now. For those of you who are in here virtual or in here physically, this is 1871. It is Chicago's technology incubator. It was voted just prior to the pandemic the #1 technology incubator in the world. If you have any questions about 1871, I've been a member here for a lot of years. I'm happy to answer them as best as I can. But it's a really great tech community. They are very supportive of anybody in either just kind of the idea phase, the startup phase, the growth phase of their company, and they do have corporate partners as well. That's it for 1871. And at this point, I think I'm going to toss it over to Caroline because if I'm correct, there is somebody in Virbela who is going to represent Virbela today.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome everybody. It's really fun to do this, to have the cross section of both being in the metaverse as well as an in-person event. So it's great to be here tonight. I would like to just mention to our audience here that we have the ability to have a public chat in the lower left-hand side, and you'll see on these two screens where you can follow along during those presentations with the middle area being the stream section. But in terms of Virbela, I want to introduce Sarah Seagrass to the stage, and she's going to give you a little bit of a background and understanding of what is Virbela and what's it all about. So Sarah, do you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Caroline. And it's good to meet everyone. I am the VIP of community with Virbela. I'm really just interested in driving healthy human communities around all types of good work like y'all are doing here today. And so Virbela was designed by organizational psychologists. We're really dedicated to providing a safe, engaging environments for anybody that would like something like that. And so really proud to have Nite Chicago as one of our many amazing neighbors here in the Virbela Metaverse and Virbela Open Campus, and bringing together communities talking about such important topics like healthcare. So thank you so much for being such a great neighbor, and we're so happy to have you here.
Awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much. So I'm going to kick it right back to you, Matt.
Thank you very much. And that was Virbela. We also do have a bunch of partners that help us out. So as you know, as we mentioned, this is the event is produced by Nite Chicago. They're sitting right over there if you have any questions about what they do, but ultimately they help us produce events like this. But we wouldn't be able to do it without some partners as well. One of the other things about this is also on Nite Chicago, AWE Nite Chicago. We've partnered with Augmented World Expo. If you don't know who they are, you should definitely check them out. That is also where we are streaming live at the moment. So do a quick little shout out to everybody who's watching on Awe Live. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to Ori and the team at Awe, who actually, I believe, is it 1 week or 2 weeks until Awe takes place in Europe? I believe in Portugal. We'll find out before the end of the presentation, and I'll give you a little bit more information on that. But Awe is Augmented World Expo is probably the world's largest virtual reality and augmented reality kind of event series that actually takes place in person. It takes place 3 times a year, once in the United States, once in Europe, and once in Asia. Asia, I believe, took place just a couple of months ago, or just about a month ago. In the US, it took place in San Jose in June, and it's taking place, I believe, like I said, in about 2 weeks in Portugal, but I'll get the actual dates in just a moment. But beyond that, we have some other awesome partners, and I'm going to actually toss it right back to Caroline to introduce XR Women.
Thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, so I am a part of an incredible global community of 600 women that represent over 50 countries called XR Women. It was started 2 years ago by 3 women who have been very, very active in the XR and VR/AR community: Sophia Mashasha, Julie Smithson, and Karen Alexander. With our programming, we're actually doing a great deal to first bring more women and leaders into the space of XR to break down the barriers that have existed in that industry. Number 2, to share resources. And number 3, to mentor and elevate other women in the space. So we're excited. We've produced over 100 events over the last 2 years, and we're about to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. So I'm really thrilled to be here. My name is Caroline Dennis. I have a firm called 2 Degrees, and I help align founders and leaders with adjacent disruptive industries stretching across blockchain, medicine, healthcare, and education. So that's me. So I'll kick it right back over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Caroline. We do have some other partners: Independent Game Developers Association of Chicago, 2112, which is Chicago's creative technology incubator, which is things like the recording industry, entertainment, and then VR Motion Learning. I will update that AWE in European Union is taking place October 20th and 21st in Lisbon, Portugal. So if you happen to be in that area or headed that way, it's a great event. You should definitely go. With that, though, let's get to our actual topic of the day and our first presenter, because that's why you're here, to hear them, not us. With that, I believe the first presenter is going to be Dr. Eileen Johnson, who's going to be one of our in-person presenters. And she's coming to the stage right now. I will let her introduce herself. That's why she's here.
Hi, everybody. My name's Eileen Johnson, and I manage patient relations and interpretation services at Northwestern Memorial Hospital downtown. And I'm here to chat a little bit about how we've used technology to enhance the patient-family experience at the hospital. I've been in my role in the city of Chicago, not at Northwestern, but at other institutions like Lurie Children's for over 20 years. In fact, it's my 22nd year in my role. So I've seen this explosion use of technology, including even how we categorize patient concerns. And so a couple of the things I wanted to talk about were on my slide. If you could put that up. Great. So a couple of things I want to talk about is really feedback. We do thousands and thousands of patients and families every year at the hospital that come and stay with us for inpatients or outpatients. And we're gathering lots of feedback all the time, whether it's a concern or an idea. And when things started happening 3 years ago in COVID, and then we saw social justice movements happening, we needed to find ways to categorize those types of concerns or ideas to have people feel more like they have a voice in their treatment plan with their physicians. So one of the things that we did is we used technology to help us in our software system add new categories of things that are happening across not only the nation, but in Chicago and certain social constructs. So that was one thing that we did using technology. Another one is that we wanted to have control plans put into place. How do we use technology to really capture this data? And how do we report on it so that we can find trends for problems or areas of improvement for, let's say, emergency department or dermatology or oncology. So we use technology to help us develop these data reporting systems so that we can target where some concerns lie or where feedback came. So we've been using those reports to really drive enhancements in the patient-family experience. The third thing that we really developed using technology is we have an answering service, a live person that answers 24/7 for our patients and families. And as you can imagine, making sure that we hear all those calls, right? Like they'd get dropped or they'd get maybe not attention, but we use technology to develop a report. So now we get reports of all these calls that come in that we might have missed, emails, etc. And then a human person reconciles the reports and making sure that those cases aren't dropped. So those are three ways that we've used it on the patient relations side to really enhance the patient-family experience. I think on the interpretation side, though, this is like a pretty new world. When I started out, we hardly even had interpreters. We would use other staff members that spoke the language. But now we use technology. And one of the things that we did was an inpatient rounding program. And during COVID-19, we were using iPads like Facebook. And we'd go into the rooms. I'm sure that you can remember some of this from your TV, right? We were actually living this. We were going into the TV with these things called VRI, and it's a video remote interpreter. And it's an iPad on a stand. And we turn those into Facebook. So those folks that were in the hospital with COVID, they couldn't get any visitors. We had visitor restrictions. I'm sure you saw some of this on the news, people outside of windows and stuff. Do you remember that? Right, so we were using these iPads, we turned them into like big Facebook for our patients so that they could communicate with their family members. So that was one way that we used technology as well during COVID. Another way that we used is we started to collect data from these VRIs and reports, and we noticed that we saw an uptick in our deaf and hard of hearing community. And we took all that data, and what we did is we were able to hire the first American Sign Language interpreter ever in the history of Northwestern just this year. So that's another way that technology was driving good patient-family experience. Imagine trying to, on an iPad, like the size of one of these guys, watch letters on a screen, right? It was very hard for our families, and so technology helped us get the first real live interpreter. The third thing I think that's really important for us is we use technology to develop a flow sheet in a software system that we use at Northwestern called Epic. That's where all the doctors do the charting. And what we wanted to do is make sure that our interpreters had a way of documenting when they were with a patient and a doctor or any type of provider, letting folks know that they were there. So if you were a new nurse coming on shift and you needed language support to set up a language plan for a patient, you'd be able to go into the medical record now, into the chart, and you could see that there was an interpreter present and how to get that interpreter. So those are just a couple ways that we've been integrating technology in patient relations and interpretation services. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And I'll take that. Go ahead. Thank you. And up next, we're going to actually jump to one of our virtual presenters. So I'm going to go to the virtual screen really quickly, but then I will actually cut away from the virtual screen and show you their slides when we get there. But first, up next, we have Aaron Orr. Caroline, do you got him?
Yes, I do. Aaron, we're so happy today. I'm gonna let the stage. I'm gonna stand somewhere up here and face outward.
Everyone. I think we do have an echo. You can use yourself back in mode. That would be great. Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Aran. As you can hear from the accent, originally from Israel. I'm a former F-16 pilot in the Israeli Air Force, and about 8 years ago, I was diagnosed as suffering from a whiplash injury due to the active flight and the G-forces. And then the idea came about to combine virtual reality and rehab. That's how we got started. And today, what we are trying to build is, let's call it the hospital in the metaverse. And if you can slide, that would be helpful. Right, another one. In a nutshell, we believe that the brick and mortar model will be replaced in metaverse and virtual treatment rooms, and that's basically what we're trying to develop. For that, we are basically operating in two parallel vertical. One, which is, I think, growing relatively fast to any type of a metaverse healthcare application, is that we are running our own virtual clinics where we are treating people in the metaverse and mainly physical therapy and occupational therapy. In our virtual clinics. We treated over 5,000 patients, completed over 200,000 VR sessions. We are now conducting a VR treatment every 7 minutes. And I think one of the key elements that we are able to achieve in the last few years is that we are in network, and the health plans are covering our services, including Medicare, Medicaid, private payers. And the second model is basically where we are trying to offer hospitals and rehab centers a full platform to enable them to start treating patients in the metaverse. Slide. The way that we are operating, or the different elements in our platform, is the VR headset. We have partnership with different types of companies, including HTC and Pico, and we're about to announce some new and exciting partnerships on the hardware side. But one of the things that we realized that in order for a patient to use the VR headset in an easy way, you need to strip out all the noise. Within our headset, we're not we don't have any other thing besides the medical applications, not just ours, by the way. We are also partnering with different types of VR developers. And by the way, if you are a VR developer and you're developing any type of application for healthcare, we would love to talk to you and offer that to our customers. Besides that, we have clinician interface where they can control and see what the patient is seeing. The mobile app, all our platform is FDA, CE registered, HIPAA compliant, with all the fun stuff that we need to make sure that we are working accordingly to what the healthcare industry is requiring from us. And maybe the most interesting part is that we created a full outcome system that anytime someone is conducting that treatment inside the metaverse, we are providing a full set of outcomes for the providers, and with the ability to connect those to the EHR. And we believe that's will enable us to quantify outcome far better than any brick and mortar clinic. Slide. So in a nutshell, how people are getting treated in the metaverse today. So patient will sign up on our website. One of our clinicians will do a video call to make sure that the patient are suitable to use those VR headsets, and make sure that they are suitable to basically be treated in the metaverse. Assuming they are getting the green light, we are shipping them a headset. We have our own logistics centers where we are managing all the back and forth of the logistics. The patient will get a headset, downloading a mobile app that guides them how to use the VR for the first time. And then they're conducting those virtual treatment usually twice a week, 45 minutes. And in between, they can access the headset or the virtual treatment room by themselves. And the clinician is monitoring them remotely to make sure that they are suitable, that they're doing what they need to do in order to recover. And if not, they can intervene. And as I mentioned previously, we are basically charging the insurance company like any other brick and mortar clinic. And that's how we are basically getting paid. Slide. Yes, I don't know if it would work. We can try to play a video. You want to try to see if the technology will handle it?
Sure, let's give it a try.
Okay. We are here to test the limits.
I don't think we have an MP4 from you. Sorry.
Okay, so slide. And if you can just good. So move to the next slide. But I'll just say, before I'm diving into the patient testimonials, I'll just say that what's in the video, and if someone is interested to see the video afterwards, you can ping me. We're showing in this video all the different data points that we can collect from within the virtual treatment room. And just to give you a sense, we are measuring range of motion, response time, reaction time, differences between right side, left side, eye tracking, respiratory, sway, center of gravity, and a lot more data points, all in real time. And as I mentioned previously, all are being analyzed and being basically transmitted back to the clinician so they can make decisions whether if the patient is recovering the way that they should. Maybe the most important thing that besides the data component, what we're seeing and hearing from our patients is the fact that the fact that they are doing the treatment inside the metaverse allows them to cope with their condition and their injury or disease better. I think that's the combination of the immersiveness and the ability to actually be somewhere else. No one want to be sick, and I think this is exactly where VR can help us to hijack the brain to treat the body. And we are seeing NPS scores and patient satisfaction scores basically double than what you will see in a brick and mortar environment. And in return, that's what I think allows us to drive patient outcomes. We are about to publish between 7 to 9 papers showing, I believe, very, very impressive results. And again, I think a great deal of that is the patient experience, right? Good. Another slide. Yeah, so that's an example of the different outcomes that I mentioned. And again, what we maybe just to emphasize even more, we are seeing outcomes across different types of conditions and injuries. We are treating patients from a variety of use cases and indications, average age 65. Most of our patients are Medicare patients, but we already treated over 100 different ICD-10. We are seeing a great result, obviously, with pain management, neurological disorders. We have very, very good results with ASD patients and stress and anxiety. And that's why, again, we believe it's not just potential here is much greater than a single app or single use case. We believe, again, this type of technology will impact the healthcare market as a whole. Slide. That's about it. You have my email here, and you can also find me on social media. And we would love to hear from you and to partner with any believer that the EXA will change the healthcare environment. Thank you.
Fantastic, Aaron. If you have any, if you have a link to the video, happy to share that in the chat, and then maybe Matt or Tom can pick that up on the other side so that we can share that for those who want to watch it later. Thank you so much. I'll turn it right back over to you, Matt.
Actually, the next presenter is still with you.
Oh, right. Okay. You tell us who's next. Who's next?
That would be Heather. Her slide's up.
Hey, Heather, take it away.
Hey, Heather, can I ask you to actually move a little bit closer to where Caroline is so we can see you?
Yeah, just come over towards me and face out to the audience.
Okay, sure. And I was trying to be able to look at my slides at the same time in the small window. I wasn't able to do that. Am I okay now? Am I looking at the audience?
I believe that's fine. Yep, if you can see the screen, you're good.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Actually, next slide. My name is Heather Bucalos, and I'm here to tell you about my personal experience with virtual reality during cancer treatment and how that led me to be an advocate for virtual reality for oncology. Next slide. So again, thank you so much for having me here. Who am I? I'm a registered nurse. I've spent the majority of my over 15-year career in maternal health. I am a 2-time cancer survivor and bone marrow transplant survivor, a VR user and advocate, which is the most important part, and board member for 18 Loop and advisor for Rocket VR Health. Next slide. So, a little bit about my background, how I got into advocacy for VR. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2014, and I went through 6 months of chemotherapy. It was a very uncomfortable and stressful time period, as most can probably imagine. But I really didn't feel like I had a great experience with being able to manage a lot of the treatment related discomfort and overall stress, both during treatment and as a survivor during survivorship after treatment had ended. And we all know survivorship lasts forever. Even at the point of diagnosis, you're a survivor. So that's the longest time period. And it's a very stressful experience. So I went back to work after finishing treatment. I ended up teaching Lamaze and learning a lot about mindfulness and relaxation. And then I rediscovered virtual reality in 2018, considered it to actually uh, be used not only in maternal health, but also for during cancer care. And I thought, if this ever happens to me again, I would love to use virtual reality for myself. Unfortunately, that did happen. I relapsed in 2019 and I ended up using virtual reality in the hospital in 2020. Next slide, please. So in January 2020, I had to be hospitalized for a month to have a bone marrow transplant. And so here's a picture. I'm using virtual reality in the hospital. And in real reality, I decorated my room to look like the tropics because I wanted to be anywhere except the hospital. And I thought, like, if I decorate the room and I just change my whole environment, then this will be a much better experience, which it was, and then highlight the experience using virtual reality in the hospital. I just totally went into a different environment. So I could actually go to a virtual beach. I could do a meditation app. I could do 360 video excursions. So not only just bringing decorations to the hospital, but I could actually immerse myself in different experiences. Next slide, please. So that really talks, gives great value to how this helps. The whole point is total immersion, that you can really go anywhere in virtual reality. Next slide. So, how did this help with my advocacy efforts, and what is my goal here? Really, what is the big idea is I think anybody can be an advocate as long as you've experienced VR before. But how can you be an advocate for other patients to use VR? So first of all, for myself, I made sure to use VR in the hospital room when my nurses were coming in, or when the physical therapist would come in, when the doctors would come in, and I talked to them about what it was doing. I talked to them about how it was helping me to relax and decrease stress. I would do the breathing exercises and I would try the games out. Right after, I would ask for pain medication, then I would do the game, and then the nurse would come in and ask me what my pain level was after medication. Then I told her, this ER actually helps as well with pain management and decreasing overall anxiety and stress. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of one of my transplant doctors. I showed her the headset that I was using, and she got a kick out of it. She did one of the underwater scenes, and she even started coming up with ideas on her own as how other units in the hospital could maybe use VR for their patients as well. So she actually became an advocate immediately by thinking, of other use cases and other types of environments besides just the inpatient transplant environment. Next slide. But there are some challenges and barriers to getting VR into the hands of cancer patients. And some of those challenges of bringing VR to oncology patients I believe the first thing is awareness. We need to create more awareness about VR and healthcare, and we need to educate those around us. So what are the solutions? Experiencing VR. So VR is absolutely experiential. It's an experiential device, right? So we need to set up demo days, and we need to find out if our target audience has tried VR and if they understand the value. And that means both investors and end users. So have patients ever used VR? Do they even know what it is? Or do they think that it's just some sci-fi thing in a video they once watched? And then, of course, there's cost and which headset to use. But all of these have to do with a learning deficit and how uh, advocates can educate the public. Next slide, please. So some real world solutions to this problem are things like writing. So writing an article about VR. There was an article in Cure about using virtual reality for cancer patient treatment. And some other solutions are digital therapeutic applications, uh, nonprofit organizations deploying VR to patients directly, or through joint avenues, encouraging patients to possibly buy their own personal VR headsets. And then obviously I am here representing 18 Loop and Rocket VR Health. So 18loop.org. If I could, ask you to do one thing today, it would be to visit these two websites. So 18loop.org is a nonprofit organization deploying VR to pediatric oncology patients, and Rocket VR Health is a digital therapeutic that is helping to address unmet mental health needs in cancer patients and survivors. Next slide, please. So Rocket VR Health, again, like I mentioned, is helping with the mental health needs of oncology patients. And as a cancer survivor myself, I have to say I really didn't understand how to meditate, how to calm down my nervous system after such a traumatic event. And they're really doing a lot of great work in this area, and we really do need to be able to reach more patients with these tools. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, and who I'm representing here today is 18loop.org. Again, if I could ask you, if there's one thing that you could do today is just learn more about these organizations, go to 18loop.org. 18 Loop's mission is to advocate for the benefits of virtual reality in pediatric cancer recovery, to deploy VR to children with cancer, and to research support of the use of VR stress management. The biggest idea here is to help patients tolerate treatment, recover, and thrive. I think thriving after cancer, during treatment, and during the survivorship phase is probably the most important use of VR in oncology. And so, what is the evolution? I believe VR will evolve to become one of the greatest and possibly most accessible tools to help increase better quality of life for cancer patients, their families, and the cancer communities as a whole. Thank you.
So much, Heather. Incredible and so related and connected to so much of the work that our other panelists are doing. I think it's amazing. Okay, Matt, so who do we have next?
All right, so we're back to an in-person presenter on the next one. Thank you, Heather, for that. I'll see what we can do. We'll hopefully put some posts out on social media about the charities that you represented. But up next, we have Matthew Massaro, who's coming up to the stage right now. And I need to switch my picture-in-picture. Sorry about that. There we go. Take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt and Tom and everybody at VRAR Chicago for giving me a chance to be here. I'm a fish out of water in this facility here. It's very different from my working environment, so it's pretty cool. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about leveraging new technologies in healthcare, of course, and examples and challenges in the road ahead and kind of implementing that and addressing the patient experience. That's where I intersect in the hospital environment. Next slide, please. So an overview, I'll give you an intro, a little bit of my background, where I intersect the patient experience, some examples of escalated concerns that we see, technology solutions that we currently have in place, and then kind of these antiquated non-tech things that are happening that maybe there's opportunity for tech to kind of intersect with, and then barriers to implementing the new technologies in healthcare as I've experienced them. And then lastly, some technologies that are on the horizon. So next slide, please. A background of me, I have a BFA from Columbia College here in Chicago. Many years later, I received my MBA from National Louis University. I've been working in healthcare administration for 17 years. I started in pediatric cardiology. I worked in maternal fetal medicine, OBGYN, and currently I'm the program director for the Cancer Center here at Northwestern Medicine here in Chicago. The views, perspectives, everything that I'm talking about here, they're my own personal experiences. I'm not here on behalf of my organization and representing them, and I have nothing to disclose. Next slide, please. So some of the experiences I've had with escalated patient concerns, we're always focused on, are they satisfied? Are they not satisfied? Are they satisfied with their experience that they had inside the walls of the healthcare facility? Or are they satisfied with the experience that they had outside the walls, the phone call that they made, the MyChart message that they sent, any avenue, any interaction that they have with the facility? What is the level of satisfaction? My job really comes into when they're not satisfied. That's really where I'm working and to try to improve. When it's going well, great. We're happy about that, but we really try and focus on how do we get better. At least that's where my responsibilities are. I've experienced and addressed these types of concerns over the last 17 years as a frontline staff member, as a supervisor, as a manager, and now as a director. Some examples of concerns that patients might have escalated in terms of dissatisfaction would be the bedside manner, the treatment from staff, continuity of care, adverse outcomes, wait times, charges, billing, et cetera. We're all patients as well, myself included, so I think we all can understand when we're irked by something. Next slide, please. So some of the current technologies that we have in play right now in my environment in terms of getting a finger on the pulse of what the patient's experience is, we have a platform, the Medallia survey. It's actually a survey. Some of you might be familiar with it, either as patients yourselves in facilities. It actually started before healthcare and other areas and industries. I think the airline industry was using it for a bit. Essentially, it's gauging the likelihood to recommend. The LTR score is really what we focus on. What is a patient's likelihood to recommend the location that they're at, and what is their likelihood to recommend the doctor or the care provider that they saw? Two different buckets. They check in for an appointment. 2 hours after the check-in, they're given a survey, it triggers to their phone, and they're able to click on that link. They get about 72 hours to fill it out. They click on the link. It gives them a pretty simple, quick survey. That's the idea. A Likert scale, 1 to 10. How likely are you to recommend these services, 10 being the most likely? We field about 70,000 responses across our system every month. So as you can imagine, that's a lot to go through. Each local manager gets triggered alerts. Most managers will send those alerts to trigger when it's a negative feedback. Then they got to go in, take a look at that encounter, take a look at the patient, what that feedback was, go into the chart, interrogate the event that happened, talk to the staff rather first, get their take on what happened, and then circle back and hold some accountability for the organization to the patient experience and ensure that we're going to get that right moving forward for them and for other patients. Other technologies that we use, Doximity, telemedicine appointments, there's other platforms that are out there. Again, as patients yourselves, maybe you've had a telemedicine appointment. This is an interesting one. This was something that was on the radar prior to March of 2020. It was on the radar. It was talked about. I think most of us in my areas kind of had the general feeling that prior to March of 2020, this was a technology that was going to be maybe 5 or 10 years down the road that we were going to see. COVID happens, and of course, everything gets expedited. So it was really fascinating to see. There's an emergency order put out that the healthcare payers were allowed to reimburse. We were allowed to get reimbursements for telemedicine appointments. Before COVID, it was kind of like, well, this isn't robust care. You're not putting your hands on the patient. How could you, how is this justified as good care? What's a patient's expectations? How are you going to charge me for a phone call when I'm not there? I'm not sitting on the exam table. You're not putting your hands on me. So that kind of changed. That dynamic changed. That was really, now it's totally prevalent. And when I was working in OBGYN and maternal fetal medicine when COVID hit. Never thought we would be doing return OB appointments or a routine gynecology visit without an exam doing that virtually, but here we were. The other one is IQ, which is a really great platform for data forecasting. I intersect with this platform every morning at 7:30. I meet with the nurse managers and the nurse clinicians who administer the chemotherapy in our units. And we open up IQ, we get on a virtual call, and we look at our infusion centers and our numbers, and it gives us a forecast. It looks at how many patients do we have scheduled currently, how many nurses are scheduled for the shift, and then we look at our bottom number, which is called patient hours. And we hone in on how many patient hours per nurse are we able to handle. So we come up with our number. We come up with not 20. 20 is our number. 20 and below is the amount of patient hours. And that sounds like a lot for an individual nurse. They're going to come in and work 20 hours in a 10-hour shift. That's what happens is we'll have maybe 3 patients that are receiving their infusions at the same time. One nurse can handle those 3 patients, so cumulatively over the day. Thankfully, with the way we've established our operations right now, we're working somewhere around 13 to 15 hours, patient hours per nurse per day, which seems to be a pretty good sweet spot based on our patient satisfaction results, which I'm happy that we're in a really good place with that, all things considered. Next slide, please, Matt. So some of the barriers to implementing the new technologies, of course, there's the cost, the training staff, not only staff, but also if this technology is patient-facing and intersecting them, training those patients how to interact with this technology, depending on their conditions as well, it can be very difficult just to get up and think in the morning, let alone figure out how do I get this thing going? How do I log into this? How am I doing it right? Am I facing the right way, et cetera? Maintaining and updating the devices, whether it's technology or when I worked in obstetrics, when it came to the ultrasound machines, if we were going to get a new machine, the big question became, we did purchase one. It was a $400,000 machine, which actually by the whole standards is about an average cost. It's actually not like towards the top. But one of our problems that we faced was the upkeep and the software advancements were not something that we could handle internally. So anytime there was a problem, anything broke down, we had to outsource that to the company that sold us the machine, hope that somebody's around campus that can come physically to our site and take care of it. Our older machines, now granted, they weren't as top notch, but they did the trick. We had internal IT people who were in the building, a couple floors down. Tom, he would come over, he would come and fix it. He was doing it for years, so it was a lot easier for us to kind of handle that. In healthcare and in life in general, but I would say in healthcare, aversions change. For an industry that is constantly changing, it is fascinating how averse people could be to change. So when it comes to a new technology, it's like, hold on a second. Also, again, the hands on the patient. If the technology is removing that interaction, is removing the hands from the patient, there's that perception from the patients in some degree that quality of the care is not exactly what they might need. Not all patients, but some for sure. And then lastly, I think most importantly, integrating it into the system. Most of these technology pieces that I come across, if I get an email or a rep comes to my office to talk about whatever the new technology might be, one of the biggest barriers is, does this need to, and likely it does it need to interact with our electronic medical records? Does it need to interact with the patient's chart, which we have locked down as best that we can? If so, that's a lot of barriers to kind of get these systems to talk to our infrastructure of technology that we have in the patient charts. Next slide, please. So just kind of an overview. This is like the antiquated way that we address the patient concern with our patient relations team. It's a phone call that happens. Patient relations team, Eileen's team will field that call, figure out from the patient, what was your experience and what do you need? What is it that your expectations are from us to address this concern? And then that information is given to the local manager. Local manager gets it and has to interrogate the chart. Here's where it gets tricky. If it's If it's from a technology standpoint, there's a platform for a patient to log their concerns, it needs to be investigated in some way. You came in and got care. What happened? Who saw you? Who checked you in? Who checked you out? Who drew your blood? What did the chart say? What is your claim versus what are we documenting happened in your chart? And then trying to reconcile all that, come up with a game plan with the patient relations team to say, hey, here's our roadmap for this conversation. We're going to call this patient and work through this. But we need to do so delicately and sensitively, especially in a lot of the areas like where I'm working right now, where there's a lot of sensitivity and vulnerability of the patients. And we need to be mindful of that 100% of the time and empathetic and genuinely just sympathetic of where they're coming from and kind of working with them. It's not defense mode. Other times, if we need to get general counsel involved and risk involved, depending on what the claim is that we're kind of working to address. Next slide, please. So kind of some of the technology solutions that are on the horizon that I'm aware of, again, it's a very daunting virtual and in-person audience because my understanding of where the technology is headed is capped by what I'm surrounded by and what I'm having to deal with throughout each day as it is. Self-driving ultrasounds was something that we implemented in my OB clinic when I was working there. We received a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to pilot these self-driving ultrasounds, which essentially the idea was is to get these machines up and running so that they can be deployed at in underserved countries and underdeveloped countries to give adequate OB care where there is no OB care. So these devices were pretty sweet. The patients can come in, and essentially the idea is the patient can perform their own ultrasound. Now, granted, it might not have all the bells and whistles of maybe the 3D tech that might be out there, but it's better than what was there, and it can give a reasonable diagnosis or at least paint a roadmap throughout each week, each month of gestation. The other is blockchain data, which is not necessarily new. It has been around. However, it is not as much implemented in a lot of the healthcare environments that I've been in. Yes, to a certain degree, the patient chart is similar to blockchain, where it is all in sequence. Every visit that they've had, you can go by date and you can find it that way. But these systems that exist at all the other facilities, they don't interact with one another. And I think we all can relate to the fact that as patients in the healthcare world, we have much less control over our medical records than we should. We're not empowered to have that type of control. And depending how robust those records are, if the record is just a documentation typed in by a physician about the encounter, sure, you can get the after visit summary, you can get the clinical recommendations. But if the care that was given was a comprehensive image medical exam that is a ton of data. You go to the hospital, they say, go to medical records. Okay, I want to get my chart. Great. What about my MRI? Well, you gotta go to the imaging department and they got to burn you the disc. And then you got to fill out this other record for it. The idea of the blockchain, if this continues to evolve and hospitals can use this, where the patient owns their record and they come into the hospital and they get their care and they leave with the record of their care, no matter where they go. They go for a second opinion somewhere else. They don't have to go back to the first hospital and go through all the things and go through all the different floors and all the disgruntled people who are upset about having to talk this over through the patient again. It's a really, as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about that. I'm hoping we get there because, we're pretty far behind for an industry that's pretty well developed in this country. We still have lots of room to grow. And then lastly, really why I'm here, and I want to hear about it. I'm not going to talk about it, but the VR, AR, and all these other bells and whistles that some of you here, have something to talk about. So I'm looking forward to the discussions. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And yeah, thanks.
And thank you. Make sure that's turned off. Cool. And we're going to our last presenter, who is in the virtual space, John Downey.
Great, thanks, Matt. And John, if you just want to stand right over here, we're in this area, and I will mute myself. Take it away.
All right. So, So I'm John Downey from the University of Chicago. We're running a clinical trial, so I'll talk a little bit about the science we're working with first, and then I'll tell you how we ended up making a lot of use of VR. So we work with people that are paralyzed or have otherwise lost the ability to use their hand and arm. And we found that people with that condition, largely from spinal cord injury or high-level amputation, restoring the ability to have hand function is very critical to how they view their quality of life. And one way that we can do that is people have injuries either in the neck or further down the periphery, but their brains still process all the information that is necessary to move an arm and hand. And so we can put electrodes in the area of the brain that record that the area of the brain that generate that activity that would normally be sent to the arm and hand when they think about moving. And we can instead basically reroute that information to a robotic arm. And then once that robotic arm touches something, we can get sensor feedback from the robotic arm, use that sensor feedback to stimulate into the area of the brain that typically processes the sense of touch coming from the hand, and provide them with a sensation of touch on their own hand. So in this way, we provide a kind of a what we call a bidirectional prosthetic. So they both control the robotic arm as though it was their own arm and hand, and they also eventually will feel the hand as though it were their own hand. So right now we can generate sensations on the hand, but they don't necessarily feel very natural. So we're still working on improving that. But that's the vision, is that we give them a prosthetic that behaves and feels like their own hand. And so I'll say, for the reason that we're doing this in VR right now is that the robots are, there's a variety of prosthetic robots. They all have their own trade-offs, and most of them are quite expensive and can be either fragile or not very dexterous or not very well sensorized. And so by working in VR, can push forward on the science that drives this, as we're still very much doing that, working to better understand how the brain controls the hand and arm, and also working to better understand how we can provide information back to the brain in a way that it can intuitively interpret. And while the peripheral hardware, the robotic arm in this case, is not ready for that stage yet, in VR we can kind of define a infinitely capable robotic arm that we use. So I think I have a video that will hopefully show one of our current participants. You should at first see kind of him with a VR headset on, and the cables connected to his device coming out of his head, and then you'll see kind of the view from inside the VR.
Hey, John, can I interrupt briefly? If you can just speak more directly into your microphone. I can hear you just fine, but some folks on the other side are having a little bit of trouble.
Sure. Is this a little bit clearer?
Much better, much better. Thank you so much.
Okay, in order for me to share the video, you guys both are going to have to mute, and I'm going to try this again. I think we have it working this time. So, if you guys are both muted, I'm going to go to the video now, and we will attempt it.
Release.
Palm up, grasp.
Matt, it looks like did have audio, just the video didn't move.
Release.
See the screen.
Wrist neutral.
Grasp.
Release. Palm up, grasp. Release. Palm down, grasp. Wrist neutral, release. Grasp. Palm down. Release.
Okay, so yeah, so as I was kind of saying, so that is the participant there. He's had these arrays implanted. He has no ability to move his own hand, and so um, what he can do instead is move that robotic arm and hand in the VR environment. And so what you saw there was him controlling that entirely on his own. The computer was not moving the arm in any way except what it interpreted from his brain. And so yeah, so I think what we found. We didn't come into this expecting to use VR necessarily, but what we found was once we started to, it made it made it much easier for us to do our scientific development without the constraints that are imposed by the available physical robotic arms. So I think in using VR in healthcare research could provide more opportunity to push the science maybe ahead of the currently available technology, so that it's ready when that technology catches up.
John, is this video by any chance shareable in a link, or is that not even here, but maybe on a separate channel, and I can share that out to our community? Is that a shareable thing?
I'm not sure I'm not sure we have it quite ready for that. Let me think if I may be able to find a better
That's
better
okay.
version.
That's okay. And I will tell the group that I found this article about this particular, about John and his team and this patient here, and it's incredibly fascinating. So if I can do that while I'm here, I'll put that here in the chat for others to check out. It's a truly extraordinary project. Thank you, John. Great, and you're all set? That's it for you, John?
Yeah, I think that's what I got. I
Okay.
think it's great to
That's
hear
a
all the
lot.
other uses too.
That's a lot. Thank you so much. Okay, Matt, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, John. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. The only way for us to share the video was kind of on the screen behind me. We're going to work on getting a better video share into Virbela and the live at the same time. But it did actually play audio live here. It played live on our screens here. So we kind of got it half fixed this time around. This is one of those things that we're iteratively learning as we go through this every month. But with that, we're going to get to our question and answer session. So Ben, actually, if you don't mind coming up, grabbing a microphone. The way that the Q&A will work is because we are taking questions and answers from 3 different audiences here, live, Virbela, and AWE.live. And I'm going to give Tom a microphone. Do you actually have a microphone? You have one behind you. And I'm going to ask my live presenters to come back up to the stage here. So the way this will work is I can see Caroline on the Virbela screen. And let me actually get to our presenters here. There we go. I can see Caroline live on the screen. So if she has somebody raising their hand in Virbela to ask a question, I will basically mute here. I'll let Caroline know to call out her person in the virtual environment. If anybody in here has a question, raise your hand. You will see Ben come up to you with a microphone. I'm going to be quarterbacking who's talking at any given point. And obviously, if I see Tom with any questions from AWE.live, he will just raise his hand and he can read them from the chat there. So the question is always, who's going to be the first one to ask a question? And actually, I'm going to throw one really quick out to John just to give a real quick recap, because it was very hard to hear you in the live environment before you started. You have brain implants that were basically reading somebody who doesn't have an arm, doesn't have the ability to move their arm, reading their thoughts to actually control a virtual robotic arm in VR, correct?
Yeah, that's it. So we work with people. So far, it's been primarily people with spinal cord injuries. So the part of the brain that controls the hand and arm is still completely intact and still generates the same activity when they think about moving as it did before, but that information can no longer pass through the spinal cord to the muscles. And so when they imagine or attempt to move their own hand and arm, we can recognize those patterns in the brain and move a robotic arm for them instead, in this case, in a virtual reality environment, which allows us to present a variety of types of targets in different locations that would be much more difficult when working with a real physical arm.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you guys in Virbela, if you don't mind, to kind of gather in front of the main center screen, which is the one that you'll see the video on. That way we can see all of you, you can see all of us. This will keep it kind of interesting. And I want to see who raises their hand first for the first live question from audience member, whether it's someone in the room here. Oh, we got one over there. All right. So, Caroline, I don't see your hand up, so I'm going to go to a live audience question first.
Yeah, I guess for the people that were providing virtual care, excuse me, virtual reality-based care, do you have any anecdotes about which types of conditions are most treatable, remotely or in VR? Any anecdotes about like success with VR as a treatment?
And this is directed to Aaron or just so everybody knows, from XR Health. Aaron?
Yeah, so I think what we are seeing is, like a lot of other companies, a great success in pain management. We're seeing, as I mentioned previously, great success with ASD, neurological disorders, stress and anxiety. But maybe the most important thing, we are focusing on chronic conditions. So a lot of our patients are coming with multiple ICD-10 and multiple disease or different types of condition you need to address. And I think that's the beautiful thing about VR. It's really a combination of treating your mind and body with one technology. And that's where we are seeing very, very good results. Like people that have this type of need to see both holistic treatment that is not just very specific. That's where we're seeing very, very good results. But as I mentioned previously, we have a list of over, I think, 100 or even 150 different ICD-10 that we are addressing. So again, we believe now it's a far more reasonable to assume that this technology is a holistic one and not a specific one.
Thanks so much, Aaron. And right now, I don't see any questions here in Virbela. So if you want to flip it right back to the public, I'm sorry, to the in-person.
We've got one coming in live here. Tom, any on the chat? Nope. Okay. Thanks.
My question was inspired by Matthew's presentation, but certainly open for anybody to be able to take. One of the things that you'd sort of mentioned, Matthew, was alluding to some of the future technologies in healthcare and VR, AR, and blockchain technology, and all of this other cool stuff. This is the stuff that I get really excited about as somebody in the tech space, and then I'll go home and tell my wife about it, who's a nurse, and she'll kind of laugh at me and say that, hey, I was just charting on a computer that was running Windows XP until 6 months ago. So for this kind of stuff, my question is always like, for the things that can be very impactful to the patient experience, but isn't necessarily happening in the doctor-patient interaction, it seems like the healthcare industry just in general is kind of kicking and screaming, getting dragged into the future with a lot of this stuff. So I guess my question is, where do we start as, people that are in technology? Where do we start to be able to implement some of these things that can be very impactful, but there's a big kind of resistance to across the industry?
Yeah, that's a great loaded question. I think some of it, when it comes to the hospitals and where their investment is going to be in technology, it's looking at absolutely the patient experience, but it's also, there's a revenue piece associated with it. And I think that sounds kind of cold-hearted up front, but when you think about the idea of keeping these technologies advancing, and usually what's happening is the investment in the technology is how are we moving the needle in the patient care in terms of keeping the patients healthy and keeping them alive. Now, I think is the time for people who are developing technologies to kind of strike the hammer while the iron's hot, because now the shift, there's a focus that's not shifted, but it's now become more encompassing. It's not just, are we keeping people alive? Are we keeping them alive and bringing them home to their families? Now it's, are we doing that, and are we keeping them well? Are we keeping them satisfied in their lives? And I think it's, now is the time to kind of strike at some of those things. And it's not necessarily that the hospitals anymore are looking at, well, if we're going to invest in this technology, are we going to make revenue off of it? Now is this going to treat the whole patient? For example, in the cancer center, one of the things that we're looking at, which is very difficult to implement, is cold capping. And in our breast cancer center, the cold caps are caps that you put on your head, and it cools your head. And data has shown that if primarily women who are getting the chemo treatments for breast cancer, if the hair loss is a big concern, patients who are cooling their heads are experiencing a significant less amount of hair loss. The problem with this is that in order to implement it in the hospital field, it takes a lot more time, chair time in the infusion area. And so now it's how do you continue to care for all the patients at the same time with implementing this? Now you're adding 3 hours of chair time to an infusion because this has to happen. But hospitals are looking at it as, is this treating the whole person? Is this part of the wellness? They're looking at their staff as well. That's another area. How does technology impact the staff that are working in these hospitals? Because people are burnt out. It is rough right now. It was rough 2 years ago. 2 years ago was a breeze. Now it's even harder than it was. And hospitals are trying to focus on how do we retain our staff in order to care for these patients. So I think the opportunity now is ripe for some of these technologies that aren't necessarily about how are you going to maximize profits to continue to keep the lights on and care for patients, but rather how are you going to treat the wellness and the well-being of the patients and the staff as well. Kind of a circuitous answer, tough question, but I'm happy to expound further and yeah.
I have to agree with Matt. Technology in healthcare has been kicking and screaming. It seems like a short time ago, but it's really not. 20 years ago, we didn't even have electronic medical records. We did not have software systems that you could input data for patient concerns. We did not have telehealth. I love when Matthew was talking about, oh yeah, telehealth, and all of a sudden we had to do telehealth. And there's two camps. There's a camp where folks, patients, families feel that it's great to have telehealth, and then those in the other camp say, how can you basically treat me, right? We have seen the numbers rise for psychology, of course, because now people are feeling more anxious and more stressful, and they need help. So it's a way to fill that need when we couldn't before. But telehealth is just emerging. I wish telehealth could be virtual reality, because I think that a lot of patients would love to be able to at least think that they're being touched. That's the one thing about the human condition. So healthcare is a business. We have to pay people, we have to buy pens and paper and keep all the electricity going. The other side of that is the human condition. So how do we give good patient care without being present, right? Like, I'm looking at you in the green sweater, just really looking at you and connecting, like face to face. These masks have really hindered how we do healthcare. And I think taking away the face to face has hindered healthcare. And healthcare in general has not been one to jump up and down about new technologies, right? Because we are hands-on people, we're healers, so to speak, and we want to treat the whole person. So we do kick and scream a little bit when new technologies come, but there's a lot of us that are open and we want it and we desperately need it. So just kind of piggybacking off that, but it's been challenging, really trying to get to that next level. I loved that gal that was doing virtual reality for cancer patients. I was talking to you earlier about virtual reality in patients. And the one thing that I've talked to some colleagues about is how do we keep it safe for patients? Some patients might be on medications that it could scare them. They could be at a fall risk. So I think virtual reality is fantastic for some of that calming down, especially for onc patients. But I think about other patients too, where it could cause harm. So there's got to be really mindful discussions around it.
And if I could just piggyback, one other thing that kind of came to mind is, focusing on the wellness and also time. How can you impact time? How can you impact the time it takes to deliver the care? Or how can you impact the time it takes to facilitate all the other things that a patient has to go through that has nothing to do with their care? There's so much time that's spent before they get face-to-face in the exam room on the operating table. And how do we consolidate that time? Because there's so less people now that are working in it, that are contributing to it. I mean, shoot, I thought about coming here today and I was like, man, tomorrow's gonna be tough. And it's like, you just gotta do it. You gotta get up and do it. But time is really important too. For anyone who's listening, who's, thinking about how their software might be something that a healthcare facility would buy into. Wellness and time are really important right now.
Caroline, did any of the panel members in the virtual space want to add to that?
Does anyone want to touch on any of that? John, Aaron, I know that, or Heather, I know that there are some things that might have triggered.
Well, getting back to the original question, if I understood it correctly, it was in regards to like the healthcare workers and the technology. And can I just hear the question one more time real quick?
I'll summarize very quickly. It was basically how do, I guess the technologists coming from the outside in, how do they influence this and actually help get this technology into the hands of the healthcare workers so that it becomes useful?
Okay, so since I can actually, from the patient side and the nursing side, I just want to say that the most important thing is what I think the most important thing is to decrease the burden on the healthcare worker and increase the I just lost the word. Chemo brain is a real thing. But basically to give the tools to the patients, to support the patients by educating the patients and giving them what they need in order to move forward with the technology. So like, how would we decrease the burden on a nurse if a patient is using virtual reality on a med-surg unit or any inpatient unit? So you would want to educate the patient on how to use that technology before they actually come to the hospital so that you're not taking up the time of the nurse doing hands-on patient care. Although, how do you decrease the burden for the nurse, right? She doesn't have, or he doesn't have to teach the patient how to use it, and they don't have to worry about how to implement this technology for the patient. They both come to the same place at the same time with a baseline knowledge before they ever step foot into the hospital. So sorry, I lose a lot of words. Sorry, that wasn't a little bit more clear, but basically giving the tools to each side so they come together and with a symbiosis for success.
And I'll just add, just maybe to just turn things over to Aaron. So Aaron, I know that you're not functioning in a full-fledged hospital, but I think that I'm guessing that you and your team have learned firsthand when you are being able to provide someone with a headset that gets sent to them directly. I'll bet you've learned a heck of a lot about how do you onboard someone. It has to have been successful, otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? I'd love for you to speak a little bit about the lessons that you learned about teaching people new technologies, because I'm sure you've done it in spades with XR Health.
So I think you are touching probably the most important element in the barriers that will take this technology to the next level. And I'll start by saying that change is always hard, right? 15 years ago, to buy an electric car looked like the dumbest thing that anyone will do. I think we are at the same point with extended reality in healthcare, or extended reality in general. But I also believe that healthcare facilities that won't step into the game will find themselves 10 years from now obsolete. Now, the reason, by the way, we became a provider is because we failed. We failed constantly. We tried to sell the technology to hospitals and rehab centers for 4 years, and we failed over and over because I think healthcare facilities are lacking the vision to see how impactful this technology can be, and they are only seeing the downside and not seeing the upside. Now, what we decided to do eventually is to do, to become a provider and try to prove that it's working. And again, one of our tasks and what we're trying to do now is to share with the other providers and the other healthcare facilities that it's not just safe. And just to give you a sense, I'll give you a teaser from the paper that we're about to publish, and we are waiting for the journal to give us a green light. We have 0.02% of fall risk with patient over the age of 65 after conducting over 100,000 VR sessions. And those 3 events happened, when the patient got overexcited. And that's for the.
Can you repeat that? Aaron, can you repeat that one more time? Because I think that's really important. Can you say that one more time?
And you'll be able to see that in the paper that we are about to publish. So the first paper that we are about to publish is to show safety, because as you heard before, that's probably one of the most important things. Usability, and how it's not just relevant for young generation, but it's also relevant for elderly. We have patients over the age of 90. We conducted that and collected the research in 3 different countries, not just the US. And again, I think we have a vast data showing not just that it's safe, but it's also effective to a point that, again, the usability is affecting the outcomes. And the rest of the papers will show outcomes compared to a brick and mortar clinic in different type of conditions and use cases. But again, I think one of the things that we can do and should do as a provider now is to convince the world that this makes sense, and this is not just for gaming. It's not just for. I don't believe it's not just for distraction therapy in the OR. I think the usability is far greater than a single use case. I think this technology will impact a lot of different types of use cases across the healthcare system, but it will be an uphill battle. I think the healthcare industry don't want to take risk, and it's risk averse even more than any other industry. And everything needs to be backed with outcomes and papers, and it's an uphill battle. But I think all the people that are on this call, and I think that was the original question, how do we convince other people? So I just encourage you to, with any interaction that you have, if you are a believer, ask that healthcare provider if they have anything in the hospital. What are they doing? Show them other companies, not just us. A lot of companies are doing amazing stuff. I think we need to work together as a community to spread the word that this technology makes an impact on patients' lives.
I love that. And I would also add that I'm very connected with some communities in the UK, and there are incredible projects that are actually working inside of hospitals in the UK, focused around mindfulness, pain management, identifying pain. And I think it's a great, I know that we live in a very regulated, very different country, but I think at the heart of it is that, as Aaron said, it's really about wanting to make the change and experiencing it. Like you said, Heather, you have to try it, right? Try it. So maybe it's getting all of our leaderships to give this a try and to see it firsthand. Heather, I would love for you to share a little bit about, if you would please, your grandfather's experience with VR, because what a story that is. And was that your grandfather? I apologize if it wasn't, but I believe it was.
Yes. Specifically as far as like his age and being able to use the technology.
When he started VR and how that actually happened, at what age did he pick up a headset?
So I introduced him to cardboard first, and he was 88 years old. He was in technology. He used to work for Motorola as a, he used to work as a lineman. So he had cell phones and email, and he was not a foreigner to technology to begin with. Um, so he was very curious about it. I think that was the best thing, was that like he was already kind of bored at that age, so anything new and exciting, like if he got a big screen TV, that was new and exciting. So this was new and exciting for him, and I think that helped him kind of latch on to using VR. So first he used cardboard, then he used Oculus Go, then he used Quest 2, then he used XR Health. So he was able to use the technology. We helped him. We helped him set it up because at that age he had neuropathy and wasn't able to necessarily like remember his Wi-Fi password. So he did have to have some assistance, but it definitely did help him with a lot of his different issues that he had, physical and psychosocial and mental. So um, I definitely, can champion this. I would encourage people to not look at this as something, oh, well, this is just for a certain group. I think that, yes, you have a main demographic maybe in the middle, but you have users on both sides as well.
Hey, Caroline, we've got one more question. I'm going to rapid fire this question. Actually, this one came from All Live, and I'm kind of just going to ask, if we could limit questions to about 10 to 30 seconds here. I'm going to go through every single presenter. The question from All Live is basically your thoughts on whether or not it's beneficial to try and have like a virtual companion to support people that are in a hospital stay or in a stay for treatment, particularly one that might be a little bit difficult. Your thoughts on a virtual companion to sort of help people through that. And I'm going to go through people one by one, starting with John.
All right, I'm not sure that's quite the area I work in, but I will say, if you saw the participant we worked with, he's older and he's much more outdoorsy. He was never really into tech, but he really loved the virtual environment and has really actually enjoyed that, even in the pared down version that we showed there. So I do think a lot of people are maybe would be receptive to this once they tried it, that wouldn't necessarily go in thinking that they would.
Thanks. Next, I'm going to go with Eileen.
I think it's a fantastic idea. People are lonely in the hospital. Sometimes they don't get visitors. I think it could be something great. People are lonely in the hospital. I'll just say that. It's true.
All right, Heather.
Sounds like a great idea to me. I also think that sometimes caregivers need a break. Maybe this could be an opportunity for that.
Matthew.
Yeah, I would imagine it would. I'm reminded of a close friend of mine who died of ALS in 2018. He refused a trach, and one thing that was really important to him, a reason why he did refuse the trach, was that he felt like a burden to everybody around him and all the people who loved him, even though he wasn't. That was constantly eating at him. And I think the idea of a virtual companion, someone that you can connect with, who you don't feel that you're imparting that sense of burden onto, would be really important. So that makes me think of that situation.
Okay, Evan. Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, I thought that someone else came by. I think that I think it's without a doubt will happen, but I'll take it even a notch up. I think we'll find ourselves within the next decade in those virtual environments with different types of AI avatars that we will feel that they are as good as one of us. And that will create a completely different types of dynamics. And again, if we'll use the technology correctly, this will help patient across the board. And I think one of the use cases that you just described is exactly that, is how we create this type of an avatar or different types of companion where we need those types of relationships. And I think it's just the beginning.
Excellent. Okay, so one of the things that we're doing, we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're starting this pretty much this time around. Is we're going to give all of our panelists kind of a little sort of last 10 seconds final thoughts before we close the event. So Caroline, I'm going to actually let you run through all the virtual first in the order of your choice, and then I'll do the two in person here. Your thoughts, Caroline, my thoughts. I've got a couple final announcements, and then we can get back to networking and more demonstrations. We still have food and drinks. But go ahead, Caroline, call yours out in the order you choose.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, Matt. So how about you, John? Some final comments?
Yeah, I think I've really enjoyed hearing all of these approaches to kind of implemented healthcare. I do think, yeah, I would just like to put my pitch in for, keeping the eyes down the line as well. I think, the VR has been a great research tool for us, allowing us to do some projects that just wouldn't be possible with the other technology currently available. So, anybody that likes, where many of you are looking to provide something that's usable by a lot of people, we're actually looking for much more narrow use case. So if anybody knows of any good tools for, building worlds that are only going to be used in one place, I'd love to hear about that.
Great. Thank you, John. Aaron?
Yeah, so first of all, I put the links to the two videos that we weren't able to show in the presentation in the chat.
I saw that. I will share those directly with our folks on the other side as well. Thank you, Aaron.
So two videos, again, one shows the virtual treatment rooms and one shows real patients that volunteer to share their experience in the treatment in the metaverse. The only thing, again, to conclude, I think this very, interesting conversation and an example of how the virtual and the real can coexist. My first time, by the way, in this type of environment, and I like it a lot. I'll just say to the people on both sides, both on the virtual and the physical, as I mentioned previously, I think all of us are ambassadors. We are we need all of us to work together and spread the word, because most of the people outside, especially in the healthcare arena, are naysayers by definition, and our job is to convince them otherwise. And so thanks for inviting me, and I will be happy to participate in future events.
Fantastic. Heather?
I would just say exactly what Aaron said, and that we need to be a champion for patients and maybe give them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to technology that we're not so sure that they're going to use it or not, or if it will be beneficial. But I think, like one of the other presenters said, we are patients also. So between sharing it more, getting it out there into the hands of others, bring your ideas when you go to the doctor, when you go to see your providers, talk to them about it, get them talking about it, and then they'll talk to a few of their colleagues. So just keep spreading the word.
Thank you, Heather. Awesome. Matt, did you want to take it back and do some final?
Yep,
words?
I'm going to give Matthew first.
I'm familiar with VR. I know what it is. I've heard of it. I've seen it. I put a headset on about an hour ago for the first time in my life. I think allowing people more accessibility to dip their toes in it, patients and healthcare providers. I think some of the aversion is, yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't really tried it. I've seen it at the mall kiosk with a huge line. I've taken my son to the arcade and it's like really expensive. So I've never dipped my toes in it. This is the first time. I think if people have a familiarity beyond just that practical sense that they know it exists, they know what it looks like, they see the videos online of people inadvertently, breaking their television set as they're flailing around, like that's my understanding of VR, and I consider myself relatively tech savvy. So finding innovative ways to give people the opportunity to dip their toes in it. Maybe that physician had easy accessibility that one time or that two times to virtual reality. So when they hear about it on the professional side, they connect that a little bit more and are more willing. Same deal with the patients. I've never heard of virtual reality, or I've heard of it, but I've never seen it, never tried it. Had they done that, had they had those opportunities to dip their toes in the water, that familiarity might transcend to, a more likelihood to buy into it.
I think that there needs to be a better marriage between technology and, face-to-face care. I like the idea of our patients having choices to everybody else's point, kind of giving the control back to the patient. I just think that we need a better marriage, and that comes with awareness and creativity and how to spread the message. I might want the message one way, another patient population might need it another way, but I feel like we need to get married.
Okay, Caroline, did you want to give any final thoughts on your side? Just you?
Yeah, I think that the other thing that is emerging through all of this, and some of us here in this room are very aware of, a movement towards utilizing immersive technologies, using just a computer or not having to open an app to sign up an account, referred to as WebXR. And I think as those technologies emerge, it will make things more accessible so that people can utilize it from their phone more easily or utilize it from their computer. I do agree what you just said about the marriage between those two worlds. I guess I would it's a great opportunity to invite everyone who is in Chicago to, and I know Matt is very able to share other links. There are a lot of communities and a lot of people doing tons of things. This kind of setting that we're in right now, you don't have to have a headset to use this. In fact, there are many people here, and I'm on my computer right now, even though I have a headset. So I do think that it's a combination. I spend a lot of time inviting people to try VR because I have people in my community, and I think that there is a fear, and that fear is it's got to be an effort with all of us to try to break down that barrier. So, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I'll add is really quickly noticing that we have University of Chicago and Northwestern here. If you guys want someone to literally come on location and do demonstrations of the technology, we're happy to. We're in the city. I've reached out to Loyola previously about this. I've actually done demonstrations at Loyola, but we're happy to just come out and do demonstrations. It can, and it'll be, we could do a game. We could do something that actually is healthcare related. Any sort of virtualization like that, we're happy to do that. And I will say to those of you who are not in the Chicago area, if you don't know who in your city will do this, please reach out. We'll find them. I know the people in Cleveland. I know people in Pittsburgh. I know people in New York, San Antonio, LA. I can think of all the cities. We're connected with a huge network of people that will demonstrate this, because that's what this community is kind of all about. Let's get this technology into the hands of the people that can benefit from it. All right, with that, we have a couple final announcements. Our topics for the next couple of months: November 2nd, we will be doing education. December 7th, we will be doing museums. One other little announcement that's kind of, I will be honest, we have to figure out the logistics of how this is going to work, because it actually came up during the event after one of our presenters spoke. 18 Loop, you're going to get a matching donation. We'll figure out how to set up a link through VRAR Chicago and share that. I'll try to say by the end of this week. But VRAR Chicago will match up to $200 of anything that our network raises through that link to 18 Loop, because it's a really cool charity.
Thank you.
Just came up during the event. With that, the other thing we're going to do for our in-person audience, since we're going to try and grow this. It's been a while. We were doing this for a long time. We would usually get up to about 100 people. And obviously, since the pandemic, things have changed a little bit. We're going to give away an Oculus Quest 2. And by basically being checked in on the Eventbrite to the in-person event, you're entered to receive it. That also goes for our volunteers, not necessarily for the people within the VRAR Chicago organization, though. But yeah, I know you guys already have one anyway. So with that, those are the two things I'm going to say. We're going to do this for the next 3 events. So basically, anybody who comes to the in-person event, October, November, or December, you're automatically just entered through your email address. If you happen to come to all 3, you're entered 3 times. With that, we'll try and figure out how to do some sort of giveaway for our virtual audience as well. I need to figure out how to limit it to the people who are actually showing up. It's a little bit harder for us to track, but Caroline will work on something with you. With that, what's up, Tom? No, October, November, December. Yep, Christmas present for someone. All right. or Hanukkah. Yeah, that's actually one thing that we did find out also today is that we had some audience members who realized after they had registered that today is in fact Yom Kippur and they couldn't make it. Unfortunately, we always do first Wednesday, so we couldn't really just move the date. With that, thank you very much to all of our present. What was that?
I
Sorry,
just wished everybody who was celebrating happy Yom Kippur.
Gotcha. With that, thank you again to our presenters, to our sponsors, to our panelists, to all of the people who are volunteering to make this event happen. At this point, we're going to go back to just, if you haven't tried, for anyone who hasn't tried virtual reality or anything, please try it. We have demonstrations here. We do have some food and drinks left. We got augmented reality demonstration back there, and we hope to see you all next month. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Yeah, this is one of those things where I feel like hard to make the connection between these two events. So we are still working on things here.